Hoi, my name is Sana and I had a really weird reading year in 2024. One of my goals was to read 75 books. Definitely failed that, but my other goal was to read all of the Brontë novels. I didn't quite get there, but I think I did pretty well. I spent a lot of time crafting, a lot of time traveling. I spent about a whole month prepping for the Jane Austen Festival. Then I spent a whole month prepping to go to Japan. And I probably spent a whole month preparing for my Wuthering Heights pilgrimage that I was a lecturer on. I feel like that's a pretty good explanation of where a lot of my time went. When I don't reach my reading goal, which I always feel absolutely fine about, I like to look at the pages that I read. So in 2024, I read 11,522 pages. But I think what shows my reading style pretty well is how many days on average it took me to finish a book. And that is 48 days. Though things might have been skewed by the fact that it took me 701 days to finish Outlander. Video on that to come. I read 18 new authors, which I think is always exciting. My highest rated book compared to the books I read was Ducks by Kate Beaton. The subtitle of that is 2 Years in the Oil Sands. I'm absolutely obsessed with Kate Beaton. She has this really funny webcomic that I love, sort of literary themed comics, and Ducks is something entirely different. It's huge. I got it from the library and it is incredibly depressing because it's about the treatment of women in jobs that usually have a lot of men working in them. It's about sexual assault and just treatment of women in general. I would still really recommend it if it's a topic that you're interested in, but I am very glad I read Ducks. And apparently everyone else on Storygraph agrees. I DNF'd, did not finish 3 books. I feel like there's probably a few more, but these are ones I officially DNF'd on Storygraph. Brideshead Revisited, we were reading for a book club after watching Saltburn, because I loved Saltburn, and I hated Brideshead Revisited. There's a lot of like rich people living their rich lives books that I do enjoy. A lot of like Regency related things, like dark academia stuff, but this for me just had zero interest after reading. I think I managed to get a good few hours into the audiobook, but it was not grabbing me. That is a book that I've owned for so many years, and I can just cross it off my list and let it go. This Is How You Lose the Time War is another one I DNF'd. People seem to love this book. It's sci-fi, it's short. I don't know if it's like a love-to-hate situation. Wait, hate to love? I didn't read that much of it, to be honest. For this, it was the writing style that absolutely put me off. I could not make it through the sentences. Like the way it was written, I had to reread every sentence a bunch of times, which I think is clearly a sign that it was not for me. And then finally, I started listening to this quite short audiobook called His Black Tongue. Incredible cover, very interesting audiobook effects. There was like sound effects, very creepy. It's like a monk and another person who come to this village and things have obviously gone very wrong. It is cursed. Demons are there. It's all a bit hush hush, but then at night it all comes out with appropriate sound effects. I was very curious about it, and then I started reading some of the reviews and everyone was saying it just turns into this big battle and it becomes very video gamey, and it already felt a bit like I was sort of listening to cutscenes from video games because the dialogue was so simple, and then you add all the background noise in. It just wasn't working for me, so I DNF'd that as well. My top genres this year were fantasy, literary, romance, which I guess a lot of the classics I read plus Outlander would be classed as romance. Very intrigued by that. That has never been on any of my genre lists, I think. And LGBTQIA+ was on there as well. Then most of my books were reflective, adventurous, emotional, dark, and mysterious. I read 28% nonfiction, which was quite surprising to me. 38% audio, 3% digital, which I think was exclusively Outlander, and 59% print, 5 graphic novels, 1 book in Dutch, and 2 poetry collections. The general theme of books I didn't love this year was that I liked the plot and the themes and the idea, but I just didn't like the execution. I don't know if I'm becoming more critical or if I just had some bad luck with picking certain books. For a lot of them, it didn't mean that I didn't enjoy them. It was just that I was expecting more from them and I had this vision of what the book was going to be and it just didn't live up to it. I feel like I've had a lot of conversations with friends about how there seems to be a lot more books that are being published that just need like a little bit more care and just another edit and a bit of extra work, and that's obviously a publishing issue where editors are being rushed, authors are being rushed. It seems like a bit of a shame because you can just see that the potential is there, but then due to a bunch of different circumstances, it doesn't quite get to the point of like being what it could have been. I'd be curious if any of you have noticed the same thing in your more recent reading especially, and I think partly because of that I would like to make sure that I include a bunch of like backlist in my reading for next year. I've cleared the negative bits and I'm excited to talk about the best bits of the year. And the first one, kind of rare for me, is a book that actually came out last year. This is a proof copy from the publisher and it is Private Rights by Julia Armfield. The moment this got announced, I knew it was going to be the one for me. And this did not disappoint. You might know Julia Armfield from successes such as Our Wives Under the Sea and Salt Slow, which is her short story collection. If you've read her other two books and enjoyed it and have missed this one, definitely pick that up as well. She writes literary but super eerie, scary, uncomfortable books. The book is in conversation with King Lear. It's about 3 daughters and their father has passed away, and they're also living in this world where it has been perpetually raining. You know, things have started flooding to different degrees, but people have sort of adjusted to this life because it's been happening for such a long time, and you switch perspectives between the sisters who all have very different personalities. There's a clear sort of like outcast sister. It's about this short period where they figure out how to deal with the death of their father. I loved reading about the relationship between the sisters, and I loved this apocalyptic backdrop. Again, really interesting to see, which is my favorite thing about apocalyptic novels. By the way, I have a podcast about apocalyptic and dystopian books called The End of the World Book Club. The first season with 8 episodes is available for you to listen to. And actually, I would love to have Julia Armfield on the podcast. I'm going to send a request out for that soon, so we shall see. But I love seeing how authors think people might react to these kinds of scenarios. It's beautiful, it's sort of meandering, but it has enough action in it sort of at the same time. I will read whatever she decides to write next. Also, I went to see an event with her in London for the release, and it was really interesting to hear her talk about the book and learn a bit more. Then a book that people have been trying to get me to read it for years. And you know when something gets so popular that you're like, oh, I'm not sure it's for me. It's Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. It is really, really short. I happened to listen to the audiobook, but I feel like either audio or physical would be great. I don't love reading about dreams and visions and kind of whimsy, and I thought Piranesi was going to be like that, but it's a little bit darker. It has like a slant of dark academia in it, and it was quite funny. Again, I don't read funny books, but it was adventurous. It is a bit weird, but it wasn't too weird for me. If you haven't heard of it before, it is about a person who is living in these halls, these endless halls that he wanders through. Some of them have like old statues in them, and there is a rising tide and there's seagulls. It feels like a stranded person, and he obviously has like lost the plot a bit. The mystery unfurls from there. I highly recommend it. Flawless execution, I would say. I also finally read The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. I've had this book for so long, maybe 10 years. It is tiny, and they are these reinterpretations of fairy tales. Now, I definitely have thoughts about this. I also think the stories are ordered in a way where like all the similar ones are next to each other, which I don't like. I wish they would have like swapped it out a bit more, but it's the writing of this that I loved, which means I probably should read more Angela Carter. There's a story about a little feral wolf girl and a vampire. Maybe great if you've just gone to see Nosferatu. There's just some weird shit in here. There's a Bluebeard story in here. The Puss in Boots story is bizarre. Halfway through, I did find an audio book production that's basically like a radio play, like sound effects and all, which is the first time I'd properly listened to one of those. And it's really funny for these books because there's just like music and wolf girl growling, people with pitchforks walking through the forest sounds. But I loved the weirdness of this. Did I love the actual retellings and what they did to the stories? It's like felt a little bit predictable, but I enjoyed the vibes. If you have read Through the Woods by Emily Carroll, which is like one of my favorite horror folktale retelling graphic novels that I reread every Halloween, this feels like an excellent companion to it. I am deep in all things Gothic, and my next favorite is The Gothic, A Very Short Introduction by Nick Groom. These books can be great or just a bit disappointing because they're all by different authors. Feels like attending a 3-hour lecture. They're very, very dense. I underlined an insane amount. They're a fun way of being introduced to a new topic, but if you already know things about it, it kind of ties everything together through time. This spends a lot of time talking about the Goths, the early barbarians. Didn't necessarily love that bit, but talks about architecture. I took this with me when we went to York, partly to see the York Minster and kind of put everything together. It was really helpful, really interesting. I would like to go through again and look at the bits I underlined and sort of take those out and put them in my commonplace book that I'm working on, just to make sure that I can sort of remember everything I learned from this. But very much enjoyed carrying this around with me. I have many more that I'm excited to read, including a very short introduction to horror and a very short introduction to plague. It's the 2nd edition. One of the plague ones is more modern, and it's about, probably there's a new version including COVID now, but this is like historic plagues. I always thought these books looked so boring because I was introduced to them like over 10, 12 years ago. Turns out they're really interesting. But yeah, take it book by book. So read reviews for the individual ones, I'd say. On my Brontë journey, I have 2 books left to read. I'm both in the process of reading them. It's The Tenant of Wildfall Hall and Shirley. I'm doing a little series about my journey of this on like TikTok and Instagram Reels if you're interested. But I think my favorite one, so I'd already read Jane Eyre, I'd already read Wuthering Heights, and my favorite ones of the new ones I read, Charlotte is not going to be a favorite for me unfortunately, although I love Jane Eyre. I think I enjoyed Agnes Grey the most by Anne Brontë. It's quite short, it's a governess novel, and it's just about her experience of being a governess and not being treated very well and going through different families. And this felt like it had a hint of Austen in it as well. Out of all the Brontës I've read, this sort of felt the closest to that experience because there's a lot of sort of, yeah, some silly rich people. And I went to see a play called, I think it was The Other Brontë, and they focused on Anne quite a lot. She's the one that kind of gets left behind, although for a lot of people she's a fan favorite. But it was really interesting seeing a little bit of her story in that play and then going and reading this. My favorite book of all time is always going to be Wuthering Heights. I reread it again this year. I did tabs this time for the first time because I was preparing for the literary pilgrimage that I was leading. I have a full video, if you haven't seen it yet, about me going to Haworth in Yorkshire last year and reading some Brontë books. If you'd like more Brontë, this is not a new book for me, but a solid favorite. And then finally, I reread the full Old Kingdom series. And I don't read that many series, but the ones that I do, I absolutely love, and I just want to talk to more people about it. The original series is 3 parts, the Old Kingdom series. They came out probably in the 90s, I would say. You know what? I don't know the distinction between high and low fantasy. There is like demons and creatures from death and a bit of magic, but it's not very complicated to get into. It is a young adult series. One of the things I love most about it is all the female teenage characters are just so wonderfully like self-assured and solid and interesting to read about it with all their flaws and their insecurities. I reread the whole thing, including the newer one, which I hadn't finished yet, which is Terciel and Eleanor, which is the story of the parents of one of the main characters. So after writing the original 3, there has been some prequels and some sequels, but you can basically start almost at all of them except for Abhorsen. And my favorite on this reread has been the prequel that is set, is it hundreds of years before the original series? It is Clariel. You can totally read this on its own. I feel like this is not a huge spoiler because it says on the back, can she rise above the temptation of power? It's kind of the origin story of how someone can turn into the villain. And this is actually the one that feels the most similar to a setting like Six of Crows. It's like this old merchant city and there's lots of corruption. So that's not a bad one to start with, weirdly and chronologically in the storyline, because this is 600 years earlier. If you want to start with the first one that was written, that is Sabriel. The audiobooks for the original trilogy are read by Tim Curry and they're so good, and I've been really sad to, so I've listened to all of them in audiobook, and all the other ones have been fine, liked some more than others, but the original 3 with Tim Curry are an absolute treat. By the way, I bought the Australian editions, bought them all at the same time, and I'm so sad that I bought this one right as it came out, and because of that it's bigger. If anyone wants to trade me for the later released smaller version, let me know. Fun fact about publishing, I worked at Hotkey Books when they took over the Old Kingdom books and started publishing the like prequels and sequels. And when you leave a publishing job, you will get like a going away card, and very often they will Photoshop a cover of the book that they know you like the most or that you were involved in the most, and they'll like Photoshop you into it and like change the title or something, because obviously a lot of the time the publisher will have the layered cover image file so they can mess around with it. So my leaving card was with this image of the UK edition of Clariel. So it feels very special to me. Big plans for my reading next year, so we'll see where it goes. If any of these were your favorites or are on your TBR for the next year, I'd love to hear about them. I hope you had a wonderful reading year, and I'll talk to you next time.